Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Included series. My name is Dana Wilson, and I'm the CEO and founder of CHIP, which stands for Changing How Individuals Prosper. CHIP is a digital platform connecting individuals like you to Black and Latinx financial professionals. This series was started to give people of color a chance to tell our own stories and thoughts around wealth. We hope to demystify stereotypes that still plague many of our communities, regardless of economic status. So sit back, relax, and let's talk money.
All right. How is everyone doing? And welcome to another episode of the Included series. I hope everyone is continuing to stay safe and do as much self-care as possible, with everything that's always going on with the world, especially now. But I'm really excited to bring in our next guest, Paris Tyler, who is the founder of Vibrant Communications and the co-founder of Posh Entertainment. So welcome, Paris. How are you doing?
I'm well, Dana. Thanks so much for having me on this evening. I'm excited to chat with you.
No, absolutely. I'm glad you're on, and I'm glad we reconnected. Like we were just talking about, I can't believe it's been a year.
Yes, definitely. I feel like the last time we connected, I was still living in New York, and I'm here in Atlanta now.
Yeah. I literally think you had just texted me and told me that you were moving.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, what?
We had just connected, right? Like we
had yeah. And it's like everyone was just migrating that way to Atlanta. I feel like Atlanta has now become this amazing ecosystem for everything.
Definitely, it's for sure an opportunity and an innovation hub, and an innovation hub. That's like a word. But yeah, no, there's lots of opportunity here. I'm super excited to just kind of be a part of it and just what's taking place here, especially when it comes to Black entrepreneurship and just Black innovation is amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like we're going to have to get into a lot of that as well. What's going on in Atlanta and the community and the ecosystem and the tech scene that's really starting to boom there, or really has been booming, what I've seen for the last at least year or two.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm excited to hear more about that. But let's definitely start with you. So when do you feel like you fell in love with money and really realized the power it had in your life?
I would have to say, I think when I started Posh Entertainment, I started Posh Entertainment in 2011, 2012 with three of my girlfriends, which is an event production company. We host, social events in the city of Chicago. And I was working full time, like all of my business partners and I were working full time. And this started out kind of just, us deciding to have an event, and from there seeing the success of our New Year's Eve event in 2011, like the end of 2011 going into 2012, decided to start our company. And I think from there, starting to see another stream of income coming in on top of my minority-based salary of what I used to live on.
Mm-hmm.
When I think I really fell in love with money and just the power it has, but also just understanding what it can do for you and just the freedom and the opportunities and the doors it can just open for you. I think that's when I definitely decided like, I do love, money and what it can do. I just don't have to rely on my day-to-day paycheck, but I have supplemental income that can help me pay down debt or just help me save. And that was, definitely an eye-opening experience for me then.
Yeah. And I feel like it makes such a big difference when you not only have, your salary that you can now just kind of use in another way. Now you have some other income, to your point, that you can use for basically anything that you want or you need to, right? It becomes another source of the ability to build wealth and to realize that.
Right. And I think, thinking about it, especially when you have a 9-to-5 and then you have a side hustle, and just thinking about even with that side hustle, you are in control of that. Like you can open the doors to what that income looks like. So the four of us were able to just think through and ideate around like, okay, how often do we want to host events? And, are we looking for sponsorship, and then on top of it, looking at a percentage of the bar from the event, or, paying or having our customers or our, attendees pay us, to attend the event. So thinking through all of like, just kind of, I think like the pay, just like as far as pay structure and just as far as like sales opportunity there, which is, I think, really eye-opening because, of course, with your 9 to 5, they pay you the salary, they take out taxes, they take out whatever you need for benefits. But, with our money, of course, we understood everything with taxes and all of that. But it just helped us understand, operating and running a business and what we can do with it.
Yeah, which is a crazy thing, right? It's like it's one thing to work at a company, but to run an actual business of any kind is a fun venture. But I think even more fun and even more interesting when you have friends alongside you who are able to dive into that and tap into that wealth as well. And I think a lot of people always, have all of these stereotypes around friends not being able to be in business together, things always going bad. And it's great to hear that you had such a great experience there. And what was that conversation like when you all went in to kind of start this business together? And were there any challenges or anything that came up as well?
Definitely. Like I said, it was, Posh was born out of just like us thinking through like, hey, what are we doing for New Year's this year? And we're like, hey, we know people, let's just have an event. And seeing the success of that event and actually making a profit on that event, we decided to take it a step further. And just thinking about what the city of Chicago had missing. This is 2012, where cities like DC and cities like New York were taking advantage of day parties. And we decided to just leverage that opportunity in the city of Chicago to actually host day parties. So, there weren't other party promoters or event planners really leveraging that idea. So we decided to bring it to Chicago. We were also for women, which was different because I think that nightlife tends to be very much so a male-dominated industry. So we had, we were able to use that, I think, to our advantage and leverage that as well. But I think with us, it was always about like our friendship was, always important, no matter with business, we always thought about like, hey, we're still friends at the end of the day. We want to walk away from this still being able to call each other friends, call each other, sisters. And of course, we also thought about, the business structure, everything from writing a business plan to opening a bank account to throwing up our websites and social media. Like we wanted to make sure that we were still as professional as possible. We wanted to make sure that we played into each other's strengths. So understanding like, who, based on their 9 to 5, what is it that they, really do well as far as like, I'm very much so strategic and I know about operations. And then I have a business partner who's very creative and she works on the production side of TV. So thinking about how that can all play into running our business well was just like, us really sitting down, thinking about like, how often are we meeting? Like we meet, in person, at the time we were all living in Chicago, we're now all based kind of like across the country, the 4 of us, and even thinking about retreats and gathering, once a year to think about the next year, what worked well for us this year, thinking about how we can take that into the upcoming year with just like growing and just continue to sustain as well. So I think that also just like opened the door for me. And now, even running Vibrant Communications and having my own agency was just like, that was like the door for me to understand entrepreneurship, to understand, having a small business. And now that I have been running Vibrant, I'm going into my 5th year. I just completed.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's not easy, right? It's like getting to your 1.
I know, right? It's so interesting because I'm like, where is the time going, right? So like, just thinking, and even with Posh, thinking about 2011, 2012, here it is like 2020, and thinking about, we're still, given COVID, we've had to put things on hold, but just to know that we're still, together, almost 8 years later, like, and we're still thinking about 2021 and how we want to just kind of like navigate and continue on. It's been a journey, but a great one. Of course, there's been challenges. But I think at the end of the day, there's like the foundation of understanding friendship and understanding, what's most important when it comes to our relationship.
Yeah. And I think that's such an amazing journey because we all have our friends and we all have our group chats, right? And how many businesses have been started or talked about really
Exactly.
within those chats,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Even with mine, right? It's
For
like every
sure.
single day or month, it's like you're talking about all the things that you should do, but to actually act on it and have
Mhm.
everyone put those business minds on and not just make it a leisurely thing. Because I think
Exactly.
that's where a lot of businesses and partnerships kind of falter, especially with friends, when you don't really come together and strategize and put it in strategic thought process and with all the structure that you all did to make sure that everyone was protected from a business
Right.
standpoint, and then also to make sure that you all are generating this extra revenue and this extra wealth in a way that made sense.
Yes, definitely, definitely. It's very much so important. Like you said, I think that everyone's talked about ideas, like business
Mhm.
ideas, or just ways to solve like current problems in our everyday lives, and then just acting on it. Because I think oftentimes that pulling the trigger can be a challenge. Like, is it a heavy lift? But I think if anything, during this time of kind of like where our nation has been a bit on hold, I feel like people are taking advantage of the time and just thinking about creative ways to just or creative outlets to just put their talents to use and their gifts to use as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So how did you, like when you all were building out the business with everyone being in Chicago and now that you all are kind of spread across the country a bit,
Mhm.
are you all still kind of focused on that market, or is kind of with COVID, are you all kind of figuring out what that next pivot will be and how you'll sort of make that?
So we're still focused on Chicago. We also, I think, have taken our just experience with Posh and are just capitalizing on that in our respective cities. So I would even say that at the beginning of this year, before COVID, I hosted a happy hour in Atlanta.
Oh,
A
awesome.
series, yeah, with a series actually with a gentleman who owned a few clubs in Chicago who's moved to Atlanta. We worked
See,
together.
it's like everything works out.
Exactly,
Timing is
exactly.
everything, I swear.
Exactly. So we worked together in Chicago, and we were, hoping to get something started here in Atlanta. But I have a business partner who, she was in Nashville. She's now back in Chicago, but she's even, started, an event series in Nashville, and the same with my other business partner who's in Charlotte.
Mhm.
So she and her husband have a monthly mixer that they, hosted too. So I think if anything, we've decided to just use our talents and our experiences with Posh, from Chicago to and apply them to our, our current markets as well. But not to say that we haven't done, anything in different cities. A couple of years ago, Atlanta hosted the Super Bowl. We actually hosted a few events that weekend in Atlanta as well. So
Awesome.
just thinking about kind of like where we can maximize and what makes most sense. So right now, as we have even as time is going on and our lifestyles are changing, and we're even, looking to discuss, kind of like what does Posh look like, going forward in 2021 and beyond, especially given, with COVID,
Mhm.
tend to be the same. I know that people have, just in conversation with friends, people are hesitant to be in crowds or, being around
Yeah.
new people. I think going forward, I think it's been a shock to how we live life and how we socialize, and just understanding how's the best way or what's the best way to pivot, moving forward as well.
Yeah, it's crazy to think like how much this has really impacted all industries, right? It's like normally when we have a big problem or something challenging going on in the US, it's somewhat, concentrated on one specific industry. But it's like
Right.
COVID came in with an entire plan of just dismantling and restructuring every industry. Just
Exactly.
the way
Every
that
industry. Like
yeah,
no
and just
industry
the way
has
that
been
we think
untouched
about
by
it.
this.
I know. It's just, it's just like came in and did that. But, I guess also there's some good that's, we're trying to focus on, and that comes out of it in some way, shape,
Mhm.
or form. And it's been great that you've been able to really take those skills and even possibly take that wealth and that revenue and jumpstart your business that you're working on
Yeah.
now, that you've had for the past 5 years, which is Vibrant Communications. How was that kind of coming off of, well, not coming off of, but kind of going in a different direction with Vibrant Communications. And then you're full-time in that right now?
Yes, I am full-time.
So how was that transition?
Oh my gosh, it's been a journey. It's been an experience, one that has been like eye-opening, one that has taught like many lessons, excuse me. And I will say that even just, as we think about money and just like, I have to think about money for my business, I have to think about money personally, and just, how to budget, how to create, a sales funnel, even for, Vibrant and what that looks like from, prospecting to finally, getting that client. So it's been quite an experience, especially with COVID. I think a lot of companies, I think the first budget that typically gets cut or trimmed is your marketing budget. And given that I'm under communications and communications falls under marketing, typically that is affected. So a lot of, I think, times for the conversations I've had with prospective clients to even, current clients has been around, just like budget cuts or what they're looking to focus on, what they're hoping to do, like maybe in 2021. So just thinking, I think more forward and just thinking, about like what's ahead and how to just like even support clients, in that way.
Yeah. And even just the support, like when they're not in that position, because it's like a lot of companies are trying to figure out what they can cut out, whether it's people or a line item in their revenue or their budget, right?
Yeah.
It's always that staying connected, continuing to build those relationships so that, when they are ready, you're still top of mind, which is great. And which is why, you've been able to stay in business for as long as you have. I mean, you've got 13 years collectively with what was deemed a side hustle, which is now turned into a wealth mechanism too for yourself.
No, for sure. I will say, like, my background is PR. So yeah, like you said, it's now like 14 years. I've been working in the industry and, and nearly 5 of those have been independent.
Right.
And that's one thing I have, just, I think kept with me is that relationships are so important. They're so key. Like you never want to burn a bridge because you never know, like when you may cross paths with that person, but then also just planting seeds and just, continue to water the seeds, because I have one client that we talked for an entire year before I landed them as a client under contract. So just understanding that, sometimes things take longer, sometimes people are ready to, pull the trigger, immediately. And then sometimes they just need a little bit more time because, budgets or whatever may be taking place behind the scenes with products and campaigns and initiatives maybe still being pruned and just getting finalized as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I know it's like, especially when you're working with people, it's like your sense of urgency is not theirs.
No, not at all. Not at all. And I think that you have to keep that in mind too. It's like, even when someone says yes, until you sign the contract, until like an invoice is paid, you never know, some things may just fall through the cracks. So just always just keeping my eyes open and peeled. I think that, with COVID, typically networking events was where I was able to also just prospect and meet potential clients. And given the halt on those and those being kind of just like decreased, I've had to look at different avenues, such as like LinkedIn, making sure I'm pushing my newsletter out, just, searching online, of course, continue to have conversations within my own network, whether it's social or professionally, just to make sure people understand, what it is I do, what type of clients I'm looking for, and just keeping me top of mind when they are, if someone says it like, hey, I need like, PR, they just think, oh, Paris, I know her. Like, she's great. She has, an agency with, great talent. So just wanting to make sure that I'm constantly just like continuing to just like cultivate and foster those relationships as need be.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like, that's the one thing we have to continuously do and really work at, right? It's almost, that manual work within the business that just will at some point transition into those dollars, into those checks getting cut. And it's like, it doesn't really count until the check and the money is handed and everything is clear. So what was it like when you were kind of going up and you were growing up and thinking about money? Did you have a lot of those conversations in the home around wealth? And, how do you feel like that part of your life really has impacted you now?
Yeah, no, I grew up in a household where money wasn't really discussed. I think that, I grew up where my mom was definitely, taking care of my brother and I, and she's very much so to this day, she very much so manages her money well, but it was never, necessarily a conversation that we had about what to do with your money, how to save money. I think that for me, when I received money as a child, it was like I got good grades on my report card and I did chores around the house. And, that's how I got money. As I grew older, that's when, of course, I got a savings account. And then from there, I didn't get my first checking account until I graduated from high school. And I had an internship that I got through Inroads. And I actually worked at a bank. My internship was with Huntington National Bank, which is primarily.
Oh, wow, that was a good opportunity.
Yeah. So I got my first, checking account that way, understood direct deposit as well. And even then, I think going to college, I went to college during the time where, the people with the credit cards were like on campus, like get a free t-shirt,
get the water bottle, get the, anything random, right? Whatever little tchotchke was on the table.
Right. So, and I think that, and it's interesting because, I think about that. And then my sister just graduated from college in December. And of course, that was like not her experience. I'm sure that was just like Dan given like everything, like just predatory, I feel like. But yeah, no, I pretty much, I think that like my knowledge and just, my knowledge and learning of money didn't really come into play, I would say, until I went to purchase my first car after graduating from college and understanding, all of that goes into play with making like huge purchases like that. And from there, I think that I just continue to increase my knowledge about like just ways to invest, ways to save, managing my money, the best way possible. And I think that it's, especially in Black households, and just from what I understand and what I gather. And my mother even worked as a bank teller at one point, and that that was still just never a conversation that we necessarily had openly and and just full transparency. But I do see and hear now, like my friends who have children who are of the age that they can learn about money and just so forth, that those conversations are now starting to be had. I think exponentially as opposed to like years ago, for sure.
Yeah. It's so interesting how it was like before everything just seems so taboo, especially in our culture, to talk about money, to share about that is kind of like, don't ask me about, what's going
ask
on.
me about my salary or credit score. And I think that it's just it's one of those things, like it's a learning journey. Like I definitely have had, horrible credit. I'm working on my, building my credit right now, even as I think about buying a home and just wanting to invest in like real estate, even. And just, and I think those are just conversations, even like I just, as an entrepreneur, thinking about where all of my money has to go as far as like living as a person. And I have to pay out, I have to pay for my health insurance. I, have to pay for life insurance, as well as, as opposed to thinking about most individuals who actually get those, get health benefits taken out of their paycheck, or their companies may take out a life insurance policy on them. But even the importance of having one outside of your employer as well. I think those are just conversations that, we may not always be privy to, but understanding the need to educate ourselves, whether it's through online resources or just like tapping into professionals who do the work as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And you really bring up a good point there too. It's like until we get to the point where we actually have to do something, and usually it's because we're, we've left our, corporate job and now we're an entrepreneur and we realize, oh crap, I have to go and get my own health insurance, and wow, this is what it costs. Right. Or having to go out and have your own life insurance, because a lot of those, benefits and bells and whistles you lose immediately after you leave your position, and God forbid, you have to go on Cobra. I mean, you could basically go bankrupt on that. Do that. I think for 2 months after I left a position, I needed to keep it. And I mean, when you get that first bill, you're just like, what in God, what, like, why, what, how does that even equate to anything?
Exactly. And it's even thinking about like what your benefits cover, you're like, will this cover, mental health, and will this cover an ambulance ride? Like all of those, pretty much like the policy and benefits, thinking about every instance of what you might need should something happen to you is definitely, it's deep. I will say that.
It is.
Even just earlier this summer, I was without insurance for 2 months because I was trying to figure out the best insurance where I could, see my therapist, but then also see my gynecologist, because I found one that I really, really liked. And I was just like, I have doctors that I really, really like, and I want to make sure that they all are covered under the same policy. And it was a struggle to find the right insurance, but I finally found it. But yes, it was during those 2 months, I was definitely, I was so scared. Like, I just pray that nothing happens to me right now because I'm trying to.
Yeah. And it's just like, to your point earlier, it's all just part of this evolution journey in all respects, personally, professionally, and just kind of just the evolution of continuously learning about yourself as it relates to money and wealth, and kind of being in a position where you're forced to learn all this stuff for yourself, which is almost a good thing in some ways as well, because then you do get access and, get access to all of this information in a way that you really understand it, because you have to digest all of it to make those, decisions like the one that you have to make. And then also, having that life insurance outside your company, which is so important. And it's like, now you have the ability to have it and to do that because it's really top of mind. Whereas a lot of us are at these corporate companies, we're not really thinking about, well, what happens when we're not here, right? We just assume that we're always going to be here and we're always going to be good. But it's like, in the midst of everything that's going on with COVID, this is a time where we're having to just think about that now and put action behind it in not the best manner. But, I'm hoping at least people are able to tap into what they're able to get.
Right. Yeah, no, I agree. I think, even with this, election season and just the current administration and thinking about like, Obamacare and how, I was able to, especially living in New York, I was able to take advantage of Obamacare, given that, I was just starting out as a small business owner, and it just, to have benefits that really were, pretty strong and pretty great, especially living in New York City. And thinking about everything from, I think, just like taxes to even, I'm trying to think of like what else, like just thinking about opportunity hubs, like we talk about like Atlanta being an opportunity hub, and just like even that falls into play when you're like voting on the local, for your local officials. So yeah, it's definitely one of those, issues when you think about money and just kind of like everything from personally to even just business wise, like you have to consider every, side of the coin here.
Yeah, almost at every second of the day. It feels like there's something to think about. There's something going on.
Yes, for sure.
Well, I definitely want to get into and learn more about, the ecosystem and the community that's going on in Atlanta, and how you feel like what you're doing and what you'll continue to do, and really, all the ventures that you're in are really affecting the communities in Atlanta and helping to disrupt a lot of what we see that, in a lot of those spaces where we're not really present, right? But Atlanta, it feels like we are the majority in a lot of these industries.
Yes, for sure. And I think what's great is that a lot of the big tech companies, they do have offices here. I think they recognize that Atlanta is a hub. It is flourishing, and it is growing and budding in a lot of ways. I think, this is kind of like the home of, the civil rights movement as well. And I think that's, something to consider, given, what we had to go through from Jim Crow to even and just to see, everyone from like a Tristan Walker, who is, from Bevel, to even just kind of think of like everyone from like Facebook and Twitter just having, a presence here is just, very important. And I think as we think about the disparities within tech, it's great to know that, there's an opportunity here for talent to flourish. But then also on the flip side of that, as far as entrepreneurship goes, I currently work with a venture firm called Collab Capital that is all about closing the racial wealth gap by three, awesome, amazing entrepreneurs and just investors who are investing in Black founders. That's their MO. They also want to ensure that they are bringing on venture partners that are also Black as well, to invest in our, in our innovations that can lead to job creation, that can lead to wealth creation, that can essentially like close the wealth gap that takes place in our country. But also just, I'm working with, a lot of my work and what I'm hoping to do is that I really want to support underrepresented founders, underrepresented, even audiences in just, telling their stories. I think oftentimes in the news cycle, we hear about the latest, whether it's white tech founder or, white innovative like female founder, but then there's a lot of Black founders that are creating dope like they're breaking through, they're disrupting industries, and I want to get their stories out into the media. I want them to connect with their audiences so they can grow, so they can, bring in more business, and just of course just how that can just continue to evolve there. So I really want to support them, especially given that I've worked at large agencies like Edelman and Weber Shandwick, where your client is probably, a major, like Fortune 500. They want to speak to the same audience. And I think that with my clients, and I do represent a few like more mid-sized clients that are very well known, but they still are, their audiences or their consumers are still, of color or underrepresented. So of course, I'm still wanting to bring my solutions and ideas to the table there to help them break through there. So it's been great. It's been I think that my purpose, I think I've found my purpose in, of course, like launching Vibrant. I know that when I worked in corporate, I oftentimes felt like, I was the only Black woman on the team. I was oftentimes the only Black woman at the table. Sans when I worked with Sean Combs at Combs Enterprises, of course, it was, diverse. And of course, we're supporting a Black millionaire, billionaire in ventures. But I will say that, since then, I think that it's not always just about the smaller startups or small businesses, but it is just really, really about just connecting with, underrepresented, communities and underrepresented consumers and audiences, and making sure that they're represented within the media, represented within, social media, online media, just wanting to see us completely, fully, and authentically as well.
Yeah, because it's like we're often the ones that are getting our stories told for us. And I feel like for so long that has just been going on, which has continued to perpetuate a lot of these stereotypes that still exist around wealth, around our ability to do, build things and get along and be able to construct businesses. And, people still have all of these thoughts and notions around all the things that we can do and continuously share these stories, right? And now we're at a point where it's like we can begin to tell our own stories and help our communities tell theirs, and also just kind of bring everyone together in a very powerful way. When you're talking about how Collab Capital is intentionally seeking out Black VCs, and that's, circulating that dollar around that we have to continue to keep in our community. So it's really amazing to hear the work that they're doing, and also the work that you're helping them with, so that they are able to find all of these individuals, right? It's like, we know we exist, right? We know that we're out there.
Right. And I think that, even when it comes to communications and, after George Floyd and his murder and just like the uprising that took place, and, all these corporations and their performative allyship. And it's just like, has it really moved the needle? I've seen so many emails come across where like, this company was looking for Black-owned agencies, and then, this company wanted to hire more, Black talent. But then it's like, if we did a deep dive and really looked at the numbers and saw like what took place after posting that Black square, after posting that statement of standing with the Black community, who can really say that they've made some headway or really have, pushed forward. I do know that, one of my clients has, and of course, like Collab Capital is doing the work, but I'm talking about like companies where the majority of advisors and stakeholders are white, the talent, the employee makeup is white. And I think that that's disheartening, especially as a Black woman-owned agency, when, we have just this, I know other agency owners, whether it's marketing or communications, that have the talent, that have the know-how to do the work, and, we're looked over, other talent, other professionals are looked over, for roles, based on, whether it's skin color, just based on relationships. And I think that even the statement that the Wells Fargo CEO made, as far as like the smaller pool of Black talent,
started.
we are, we are here, we are everywhere, and it's like you're just not doing the, you need to do to seek us out, basically, or even just making sure that we have a seat at the table so that we can, speak about policy, speak about opportunities that need to happen. Because I've heard from some of my associates about, they're like one of few Black, employees at a company, but they made a decision, around Black people without him being there. It's like, how can you think that's okay? Or that's okay. So just, I think, just thinking about that, now, and just wanting to make sure that, I make an impact, or how I can drive impact, and just, help with pushing it forward as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Cause it's like, to your point, I mean, everyone was so quick, or kind of waited a little bit before they figured out what they wanted to say when they, right after George Floyd was unfortunately murdered. And it was kind of like that statement or that picture or whatever that was. But yeah, it's like, okay, well, we've been there before. We've seen people post stuff and, all of these apologies. And, at the same time, it's like, what are you specifically apologizing for? Right. It's kind of like those sorries don't bring people's lives back. And what we want to see moving forward is those changes that you're talking about. Where are you putting your dollars? How are you changing internally, and not internally mid-level and below, senior and above, right? Like, who is still sitting in these C-suites, and how are you still making decisions, right, for us when there's no one up there? Yet, you want to continue to have our dollars and, hold us to being a consumer. And I'm glad to hear, which is what we know already, is that there's this, big movement where we are recognizing, or starting to really recognize, our power in some way, and start to really push that and put that intentionally towards our own communities, and how we're either giving our time, resources, or dollars behind that.
Yes. Totally. I definitely agree. And I think we've seen small changes here and there with certain companies. And then some companies, it's just like, you guys aren't doing enough.
Yeah. Some are kind of missing the mark, and now we're just kind of like, just stop.
Yeah.
If you're going to do it. If not, don't make any posts.
Right. And I mean, I think, I believe Yelp put out a study like maybe a couple of months ago, where Black-owned businesses, there was like a surge in like search for them. There was a surge, I think, maybe even in sales. But it's like, how can we make sure that it just translates across every sector in every way? And I think that it's just, like you said, like making sure that there's the right decision makers, the right advisors, and counsel to be a part of the team as well.
Yeah, very, very true. And do you feel like where we are now, just as people of color, that we're really starting to tap into and understand the power that we have and the influence that we have within industries? Or do you still feel like we're kind of, learning or figuring it out?
I feel like this year has been an awakening, for sure. I think that we're still figuring it out. I also feel like people are probably trying to figure out their place and their voice even within, whether it's their companies, whether it's within society in general, and just how can they, because I think we can all play a part, right? You know, we see how like even within sports, how the NBA, you know, was more vocal. They really made a point, and then we see the difference when it comes to like the NFL and MLB, but we see them like slowly, you know, catching up. And I think how it plays out is based on like the players and how empowered they feel within those, you know, organizations and the agency that they have to say something. And I think that can translate to even, you know, in real life where within us, like how empowered do we feel to say something? Because sometimes it's like, well, it doesn't really affect me, but it can affect you and it can affect others after you, or, you know, otherwise, as far as like how we can really speak up, how we can really make a mark or make an impact within our organizations, or just within society as well.
Yeah, I could not agree more. I think that was really well said about how we're still trying to find our place. And this, I mean, this really was a year of awakening and just discovering, or maybe even rediscovering too. So like the way that you said that, as far as things that we're now thinking about that are on the forefront. And before we get into our kind of rapid fire session, what would you say, or what would you tell to this upcoming generation who is like living through a multitude of things? I don't even know how I would have handled this at their age, but what is, you know, some advice or just kind of, you know, good things that you can share with them just to continue to empower them to move forward?
Yeah, I say like, don't be too hard on yourself. I think that I feel like sometimes people get caught up in like, you know, I'm at this age and I don't have it, you know, all figured out. And I think we're all still figuring it out, you know, every day. Like even with this pandemic, like who has ever lived, you know, who's alive right now, who's lived through the pandemic of this nature. And every day, you know, we're still figuring it out. And I think for them, it's like, you know, just to give themselves grace. You know, we're all still figuring it out. But I also like to say to seize the moment, you know, to seize the moment and the opportunity, because they have everything at their fingertips as far as like information and knowledge. And I feel like they do use it to their advantage, but to just like take advantage of like learning, take advantage of tapping into like resources and tapping into people, like the access that they have to people and being able to connect with people, to figure it out eventually, to, you know, have those conversations, to get that insight. I've had like so many calls like this year, just talking to women who are thinking about communications or thinking about a job in PR, and just, you know, always just wanting to give advice and give them my experience and, you know how. And I think that the access, you know, to me is like there, LinkedIn, Instagram. And, you know, years ago, we probably would have to meet somebody at an event, you know.
Right.
Like, I don't even know how, like, maybe look them up in the phone book, or, you know.
I know. And for everyone watching who is, you know, understanding what the phone book is, right?
Right. Like, how am I getting in touch with them?
The yellow pages.
Exactly.
Dial-up AOL, the struggle.
Mail a letter. You know, all that. So I think about just like that access, but I think right now is just the time to like really take their time, you know, give themselves grace. You know, we won't figure it out all in like one sitting, but to just like kind of go through the day and just experience life, tap into your network, tap into resources, and just like, of course, number one, like build relationships, build connections, like real connections, like not just online, but just taking them offline and just really connecting with people one-on-one.
Exactly. Those in real life connections, the ones where you respond with more than word,
a word, you know, an emoji,
an emoji. Yes.
Exactly.
We got some work to do.
Right.
All right, so we're going to segue into one of my favorite parts. I'm always curious to see how everyone answers some of these questions. So we'll start with one of my favorites. What is the one item you regret spending money on?
Ooh, oh my gosh. What is the one item I regret spending money on? I feel like everything I need right now, I need. That's so hard. I will say this. I will say, can this be passed?
Yeah, absolutely.
So in Chicago, I made the mistake of buying a car. Like I was like basically had sold. I got rid of my first car, and I was taking public transportation, which in Chicago is like, you know. But I made the mistake of buying this used car off Craigslist. And, I didn't have like a male friend with me to kind of check it out or anything. And then, of course, they had like all these problems and I had to like resell it, tell the person, like be upfront, like this is all the problems. But I promise that was like the worst. It was like the worst experience of like buying something. And then like it got broken into twice. Like I had to like,
oh my goodness.
Yeah, like busted window twice like that. And then like jacked the door up even. It was just crazy. Like that was the one time because I just bought it on a whim. Like, oh, I need a car finally. And it's like,
yeah,
I need a car. Like I really just wanted to have something because I was tired of taking public transportation. But yeah.
Yeah, I feel like we've all had that one car that we've just, if that car could just talk, it would just curse us out under the sun and literally just drive off.
It was ridiculous. Like the trunk did not lock or close. It was horrible. It was horrible. I was just like, it was the worst mistake ever.
Yeah, I had a 1998 Honda Civic pretty much the entire time I was in college, except for my freshman year. And it's like after you get to the point where you just, you get a bump and, you're just like, oh, what does that matter? And you just start collecting bumps. And I remember I literally had backed into something and the entire light broke. And it's just like, do I fix that? No, it's like, okay. Right. And then the tape goes around and it matches and you're still driving down the street, probably looking super crazy.
Exactly.
It's like for this depreciating asset, I could care less.
Yeah. Right.
All right. Next question. What do you think of when you hear the word legacy?
I love this word. I just think about like what I'm leaving behind, and not just my name, but just like even when it comes to like my family, the legacy that I'm leaving behind for my children, my grandchildren, when it comes to whether it's my business, whether it comes to like assets, and not even just tangible items, but even just as far as like morals and values and what it is that we value. But I just think about that family legacy, and that's what I've been really big on when it comes like right now, even with like building my business, even with some of the decisions I'm making with my money now. It's like, what am I, leaving behind for, as far as inheritance for like my children and their children. And I think that oftentimes, that's kind of like what we lack on in the Black community, like what we don't have that the white community has as far as like a head start on, is that legacy in whether it's land or businesses, et cetera. And I really want to take part in making sure that I'm creating that for my own family.
Absolutely, which is so important, right? It's like we're always quick to sell the land and get rid of stuff for the cash that we see or what could be incoming, but it's like the thought of continuing to pass it down has somehow left a little bit.
Exactly.
All right, and one last question: how does seeing the words Black wealth make you feel?
Empowered. It makes me feel amazing to see that, especially when I think about, like I said, when I think about my clients like Collab Capital, where it's like they are all about just like creating wealth within our community, investing in Black founders. It feels amazing to tell their story, to know that the work that they're doing and how it just basically impacts us.
Absolutely. It's Yeah, it's such a beautiful thing to see and to associate, which, yeah, to your point, is empowering.
It's amazing just to see that. It's like that's what I want to create. I want to be a part of that. I want to be, someone that is helping create that for our community in some type of way. So, yeah, it feels amazing.
Well, from what we learned tonight, I can say that you look like you're already there and doing that and continuing to do that. And, continued congratulations on that 5-year mark.
Thank you.
That is something to be celebrated. So I hope you are taking some time to celebrate that, right? We have to celebrate all of our wins, and that's a huge one.
Sure. No, I mean, to think that I'm heading into my fifth year, it's like, oh, wow, where is the time going? And, I oftentimes hear like how, year 5 is such a monumental year in any business because it's kind of like where things are just like on a roll and you really, really see and reap the benefits of what you're building. So I'm really looking forward to this upcoming year.
Yeah, absolutely. So we would love to hear more about how the reaping is going. So you'll definitely have to come back. We'll have to do this again. This is great. So thank you so much for coming on, Paris. And before we let you go, definitely tell people where they can follow you or find you.
Yes. So for Vibrant Communications, my website is Vibrant Comms. That's Vibrant COMMS.com. And you can follow Vibrant on Instagram at Vibrant Comms. And then myself, my Instagram handle is I am Paris Tyler. And you can also just find me on LinkedIn at Paris Tyler as well and connect with me there.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for coming on, Paris.
Yeah,
thank you for all of the knowledge and grace and gems that you dropped tonight. And for everyone else, thank you for tuning in to the episode of the Included series, and we'll see you next week. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.